devoured this book faster than the main character Hannah devoured a cinnamon roll. So let's talk about it. First of all, I'll say this was a really easy read to get through. I read it in 2 days. I could have read it in 1. The generalized premise is that Hannah, the main character, is a 29-year-old woman who just doesn't feel like she has her life together. She's been living kind of a nomadic life, jumping from city to city. And the narrative starts off with her just coming out of a pretty brutal relationship with a man that turned out to be married. Her childhood friend reaches out to her and offers her a place to stay in LA. And on her first night in LA, which is really her second night in LA, but it's her first real night in LA, they go to this bar where Hannah meets this guy that she dated way back in high school. And she has a choice to make because her friend and her friend's husband are wanting to leave. And so she has to decide, does she leave with her friend? Or does she stay with the high school boyfriend? And that's where the book takes an interesting turn and splits off and explores both options. And so the majority of the book, you're flipping back and forth between these two narratives. One where she stayed at the bar and one where she left with her friend. And they're both quite drastically different. In one version, she ends up in a hospital. In the other version, she has a completely different life-altering event. Overall, I felt like this book was really cute. There are a few very emotional moments that hit really hard. There are also some moments of frustration, largely due to the fact that because we were flipping back and forth between narratives, there would be something that would be exposed in one narrative that wasn't yet exposed in the other one. And so it made the interactions between the characters feel a little frustrating. I won't say that's necessarily a bad thing, because it is kind of fun to know things that the characters don't. I do think that if this was a book that I took longer to read, like if I was just casually reading this and I read a chapter here, a chapter there, it would have been difficult to keep straight what happened in each narrative, especially because there is some overlap as far as the lessons learned. There's some overlap in terms of some of the conversations that happen, although in one narrative it happens really early on and in another narrative it happens way later. I feel like if I had taken 6 months to read this book, I would have been so lost. Both narratives do end in different but similar ways. While on the one hand, I can appreciate repeating the ending scene to highlight the differences, it also felt extremely repetitious to me. I'll also say that the version that the book ended on left me wanting a little bit more. The version where she went home with her friend was a little bit more cringy to me, and I think it had a lot to do with who the love interest was in that version. And knowing everything that was talked about in the ex-boyfriend version, there's kind of this bitterness that comes about that kind of overshadows the sweetness of the relationship that she's actually in. In any case, I can appreciate that the story doesn't go for a fated love story where she gets the same guy in either version. I felt like that was a nice subversion of expectations because I fully expected that either way she would get the same guy. But at the same time, I wasn't quite as sold on the other guy. This is one of those books that you truly read more for the journey than the ending. I feel like if you understand the tropes of a romance, you know right away who the love interest of each version is. You know exactly where this is going. You're not reading this to figure out who she's gonna end up with, because you know what the ending is gonna be. I was really interested in some of the family dynamics. There were a few scenes that were kind of gut-wrenching. I'll also say that there was a point at which the main character, particularly in the ex-boyfriend narrative, was hiding something huge, and in my notes I just kept on writing girl, you have to talk to him. The longer you put this off, the worse it's gonna be. Just talk to the man. All in all, I would give this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was fun, it was cute, it was light, it had some heavier moments, but they were just sort of sprinkled in to keep interest more so than actually genuinely hurt me majorly. If you haven't read this book, go check it out, because I'm about to go into spoilery territory, so you should leave and read it and then come back. Okay, are they gone? Can I give spoilers now? Okay, let's start with the hospital version, because I feel like that one came the most out of left field. I really wanted there to be a connection with the lady that did the hit and run. I feel like there could have been some interesting things that could have happened with her. Like, she could have maybe been an interesting side character in the ex-boyfriend narrative, or it could have turned out that she was somebody that Hannah knew. Like, I would have liked the hit and run character to have been an actual character and not just this nameless, faceless being off to the side. The relationship with Henry, I got so frustrated with Hannah. Not because she wasn't, like, making a move, because I feel like she was doing plenty, but, like, Chica, he's your nurse. You really got so thirsty in a hospital bed that you're flirting with your night nurse. Like, don't get me wrong, he was being flirtatious back, and you can't tell me that he didn't know what he was doing, because he knew what he was doing. She knew what she was doing. But I'm also like, the power imbalance in this relationship is giving me red flags. So while a part of me was truly rooting for Hannah and Henry to end up together, I was also like, this is wrong and I don't like it. It felt like a dynamic that only really worked in the hospital setting and wouldn't necessarily work outside of it. Because, like, there's no way for them to really know each other, because he only knows her while she's doped up on pain meds, and she only knows him while he's kind of in customer service mode. And so jumping to the ending with that scene where she has ended up with Henry, knowing all of the feelings that Ethan and Hannah had for each other, that they had going into the ex-boyfriend narrative, it felt a little bit less satisfying. And I was a little disappointed that the author made the choice to end on the Henry narrative. It just felt kind of weak in comparison. Like, she settled for the guy that was there while she was dying. Like, don't get me wrong, I was mad at Ethan for sleeping with Catherine, because, like, if the chick that you like is in town, hold off a little bit. Especially with such a small friend group, things will get back to her, and she's not gonna be happy about it. That is not a move you make when you are still hung up on your high school girlfriend, particularly if you think that you're going to try to get back with your high school girlfriend. So about midway through the book, we get a chapter where Hannah's parents are with her in the hospital. Sarah, the sister, is leaving. She's going back to London because she has to get back to work. And the parents are like, we're staying until you get better. And Hannah's just like, no, that's fine. It's okay. You can leave. It's good. And the mom just runs out crying, and I am super confused about what's happening. And then we get this really heartfelt discussion with the dad where they're basically saying, we're sorry for being crappy parents, and we want you to be with us. We want to make this up to you. We never stopped loving you, and we realized a while ago the mistake that we made in leaving you behind, and we shouldn't have done that, and we don't want to make the same mistake again. Please come with us. So first of all, that chapter broke me. I was in public reading that chapter, and it took everything in me not to ugly cry. And, like, I appreciated that the parents respected her decision. They didn't try to guilt her into anything, and they were just like, we'll leave, but know that the offer's out there, and we care about you, and we love you. And, like, that's how you deal with that situation. That was beautiful. I'm gonna be real honest for a second. There was a part of me that wished that in that particular narrative, the hospital narrative, she would have ended up in London. Like, I feel like it's okay that she doesn't end up with a guy. Or if she has to end up with Henry, they could live in London together, and they could be like a happy family living in London. Gabby, in both narratives, her husband leaves her. In one narrative, it just happens as soon as Hannah is home from the hospital, and he's just like, hey, yo, I'm out. Which, like, douchey timing. Like, yeah, you're gonna have to take care of your friend all by yourself. I'm peacing out. And I'm just wondering if he did that on purpose so that he wouldn't have to help take care of Hannah. Because in the ex-boyfriend narrative, we know that he's cheating on Gabby, and Gabby's the one that kicks him out. And it just makes me wonder, was he actually planning on telling her, like, before Hannah showed up? Like, what set this off? Because obviously he was cheating well before Hannah showed up. What I did find interesting, and maybe a little too explicitly pressed, was the parallel between Hannah's past relationship and this relationship with Gabby's husband, and how the endings were kind of polar opposites, where in Hannah's relationship, the dude stayed with his wife, and in the relationship with Gabby, the man left. I'll say I wasn't a huge fan of the pregnancy, and I think that's just because I'm not a fan of pregnancies in general. It's not my favorite thing to read in a book, but I did appreciate the way that it was expressed. I feel like that was the first major thing that the reader knew before the character did. And by that I mean, we find out in the hospital version pretty early on in the book. She had a baby and she lost it in the car accident. And so we're left with this information, knowing that this baby existed before she got to LA, and just waiting for the bomb to drop in the ex-boyfriend narrative. Once she realized she was pregnant, I got so mad that she was just like, I am gonna hold off on telling Ethan. I don't know how to tell him. Like, I get that you don't want to lose him, but also don't act like you're gonna lose him before you've told him. Like, don't make that decision for him. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the ex-boyfriend narrative other than it was really cute and cheesy. I liked the cinnamon rolls, but I felt like they were a little overplayed. Like, I get that the main character likes cinnamon rolls. I feel like she needs a tattoo of a cinnamon roll if we're gonna talk about cinnamon rolls this much. I love that they end up with a dog in both versions. I feel like more dogs were needed in both versions. I'm not sure how I feel about how meta the book got in some places, because there were several times across both narratives where Hannah was just sort of thinking about what might have happened had things played out differently. And obviously, the reader knows because we see both versions. I appreciated that in both versions she became a nurse for different reasons. And I also liked that even the ex-boyfriend version kind of nodded to Henry just to sort of indicate what could have been. And that's where, as much as I appreciated the subversion of expectations, I still kind of wished that there was that fated love between Hannah and Ethan. Like, against all odds, they would end up together. Or she would have ended up single in both of them, and it would have just been her and Gabby being best buds for life. Because I feel like that would have been a really satisfying ending that the narrative would have supported, because they were best friends and they were roommates. No, I mean, I know that they wouldn't have been, like, in a relationship together because they explicitly stated that they weren't attracted to each other, which felt a little like, I love you, but no homo to me, but it's fine. I feel like there was room for one of the endings to have simply been Hannah and Gabby and their dog live happily ever after. And maybe that happened in another life. Hey. The fact that the last chapter in both versions ended with maybe in another life, I was just like, hey, title drop, roll the credits, we're done here. I do feel like this would be really fun if it was expanded properly into a choose your own adventure story, because there are so many choices that Hannah makes throughout that it would just be so cool. I do feel like this scratches a little bit of that, like, choose your own adventure story itch. Hey Taylor, if you like the idea, I'll take 10% commission. It'll be cool. We can do it. I believe in you. So let me know what you thought of this book in the comments below. If you liked it, if you hated it, if you felt indifferent, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, let me know. And while you're down there, subscribe so we can hang out some more. Till then, bye!